What's really interesting about the UK is a lot of churches are doing a lot of social action. It's not uncommon for you to see a church, a very small church, still doing a food bank. And when I mean very small, I mean 20 people. Food bank, they might have a ministry to mums and toddlers, they might have debt counselling. So there's a lot of social action. But when you ask people how many people are coming to Christ in that, the answer is often zero. They've lost how the gospel has to be central to that. And they've also lost how prayer is central to the gospel being central.
So when the church awakens, it looks like passion for prayer, looks like a desire to speak about Jesus to people, looks like boldness, it looks like renewed responsibility for and desire to change communities and transform communities, and it looks like unity in the body of Christ.
So I think we're sort of redirecting churches from, say, just doing social programs where no one comes to Christ, to saying, let's come behind that with the gospel, allow their lives to be changed, and then have those people change their communities. And we're starting to see the first fruits of that in places like the Patmore and the Andover and other places around the country, and that's really exciting us.
So the Patmore estate is social housing. The estates have a real reputation for being the down and outs, for being the people that society's forgotten, and it's not anywhere that you would ever aspire to live. So it was a bit weird when I was desperately trying to find a house here and saying to people, I really want to live here.
When we first moved on to the Andover 6 years ago, the decision for us was definitely based on a financial decision. We were looking to buy a property, and ex-council is a lot cheaper than other properties. I now see that God was at work from that point. Over those years, over the last 6 years, he has slowly and very gently been impressing upon us his vision for this estate. I think seeing the way that some people were living, really oppressed by some things, I just got a bit righteous about it, a bit angry about it. It just felt wrong that so many people were afflicted by similar issues that it got to a point where my husband and I was just, enough is enough. And that's when I think we really broke for this estate and for the people who live here.
It wasn't a very straightforward journey. It wasn't a conscious choice how I started thinking about praying for the Andover. It was more that when all my children went to primary school, I had more time on my head. And so instead of just doing tick, 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 a to-do list, I asked God, what is it you have for me? And he said, love your neighbors.
In the beginning, I didn't know what else to do, so I just would spend a lot of time praying. I had various different people that came along and helped me to pray. We would just prayer walk, just walk the streets, kind of getting a sense of the areas that were maybe a bit darker. Yeah, and just really praying in those places and just claiming God's truths, really.
For me, it started corporately, actually, in our local church, because we had been praying in our various prayer groups that we have in our local church for revival on the estate, and to see that change happen and to see more people come to Jesus. And I think in joining in that corporate prayer, I then began to take ownership for it, I suppose, because I live here, and it felt like God was giving me permission to own this patch. He's saying, so this is your bit of earth, and you need to take responsibility for it, because there are lots of people in this church who are praying for it from the outside, but you're in it now, and so you have authority to be able to pray in a really different way.
One thing that we've been praying about very specifically is crime levels, gun crime and knife crime in particular. It was really bad last summer. There was a lot of a lot of that going on, and we have just been praying and praying and praying protection around the boundaries of the Andover, and you know that this is not a place where this is going to happen. And like the police have like spoken to our vicar and said, yeah, the crime is like really dropping, something's going on.
We have a bit of a saying in my house at the moment that's like, be careful what you pray for. Because things seem to happen when you pray. So I think, honestly, that's one of the biggest things I've learned over the last 6 years, is that if you ask God for stuff, He's going to do it.
Now that we're here, the things that I'm praying for are ultimately revival to come to this estate. I want to be able to walk around this estate and hear worship coming out of the houses. And I want the people who are really struggling under something, I want that to get out, and I want God's grace to come in. I think when we first moved on, my husband and I felt that maybe this would be for a time, but I don't see any end at the moment. I feel completely committed now to staying for, I don't know if I can say as long as it takes. I don't know how quickly God is going to move, but I'm not going anywhere.
So what gets me really excited is to think about the UK transformed, and transformed through the power of the gospel. I would love the church to just remember how great the gospel is, because the gospel is amazing.
I believe that God has promised total transformation of these British Isles. I believe that what He started and has continued to start in various times, in different times of history, He will complete, because He said He would. And why wouldn't I want to see that?